Hey friend, welcome to the new podcast, Luxury State of Mind. I'm your host, Dammy Oshodi, and it is a pleasure to be sitting in front of you yet again. I know it's been a while. If you have listened to my previous podcast called The Plannter, I hosted that podcast for about 5 years or so. So coming back into the podcasting game with a new podcast called Luxury State of Mind. So on this first episode, I'm just going to talk to you about where the heck have I been. It's been a while since I've been on the mic. So just kind of share where I've been. What's the purpose of this new podcast? Why did the Plannter become Luxury State of Mind? And then what is the format of Luxury State of Mind? And what can you expect from the episodes? So let's kind of backtrack and talk about what's been going on, right? So like I said at the beginning, I ran the Plannter podcast for about 5 years or so. So I started that podcast back in 2016, back when I was in college, when I was young, wild, and free. And podcasting was something that was relatively new. So I was on that wave of podcasters that were coming up and coming, I guess, at the time. So I started that podcast there, and ultimately it was about creating or helping women create a life that they feel they can live in purpose and live with purpose, with passion, and with excellence. So that was a lot of the tagline that I said during the show. So I ran that podcast for a while, but ultimately I would, towards the end of it, I think I was just feeling a bit burnt out. And I'm going to just say this too. I've recorded this episode like 3 times. I've recorded this is going to be the third time. And also I'm going to say before I continue, this is going to be my first time recording on video. So typically what I've done in the past is record on audio only, but I'm just trying to push myself to do something different and record video as well. So that's the new direction of this new podcast. I mean, I've had different issues trying to put this podcast together, to even get this first episode out, different tech issues, different, just trying to even get the courage to come on the mic. So I think we should even start there. Like, let me not front with you and be like, oh, like, I had this whole podcasting thing together. I was just waiting for my big comeback. It's actually been a long time coming, and it's been a process for me to try and get back on the mic. So I'm proud of myself. I'm here. I, just feel like I have things to say, or still have things to say, in continuation of what I've done before, but a little bit more elevated, a little different, because I've grown and I've changed. So I'll jump back into the story. But basically, yeah, I just, kind of got to, towards the end of the podcast, and I was feeling really burnt out. I think ideally I really wanted it to be something bigger. I wanted to, reach people, which I did actually reach people all over the world. I wanted to, in a way, create something that could be my livelihood as well. So even create something that was sustainable. But it got to a point that I just didn't enjoy creating content anymore. It just felt like more like a job, even though that's low-key what I wanted. But at the same time, it still kind of took the joy out of what I was doing. And, different life circumstances were happening, and it just wasn't feeling good anymore. So I had to just make the conclusion or the executive decision to just stop the podcast entirely. So for the last 3 years, I mean, life has really changed. I've moved to a whole new different state. I have started a new career. I have just started growing and, just becoming more of myself over the last couple of years. So as I've been doing that, podcasting has kind of, been in the background, and it's always been something that's in my mind. I'm like, oh, I'll start the podcast, like, someone, or maybe I just won't come back to it. I don't know. Or actually, I'm gonna be honest with you. At first I was like, I'm not coming back to podcasting. It's just not for me. I think also a lot of it was due to me doing it all by myself. So that has been also a major reason as to why I haven't come back to podcasting, trying to figure out how do I do all this stuff without me getting too overwhelmed and just being like, this isn't for me. But something about this medium has always called to me in some way. I do enjoy speaking to people and sharing either lessons that I've learned or what I've learned from other people or allowing other people to share. There's something about being able to talk. I think maybe I'm a professional yapper. I think maybe that's just what it is. I just like to talk sometimes. And people just allow me to talk into their lives as well. So the year that I had stopped the Plannter, I had actually come up with a whole new different podcast, which is the Luxury State of Mind podcast. But at the time, I just didn't have the energy to want to put it together. And I was almost even going to delete the whole idea. Like I had it on a Notion board and planned out a whole bunch of things. But thankfully, I was in my right mind not to just, stop all of it, or I just kind of put it for use later. So as I said, things have been rolling. I've moved. I've started a new career. I've started just living life and all these different things. And again, that call to podcasting just keeps coming back. It just won't leave. It's like always in the back of my mind. But I still wasn't convinced that I want to be, back into creating content. So, my friends would, encourage me, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, you're my friend, whatever. I'll be like, oh man, I kind of want to do that, but I don't want to do that. Always having these feelings about it. It wasn't until last year where some interesting things happened literally within like one weekend and even from continuing from that. So this one weekend, I went out of state to another state, and somebody came up to me, somebody that I know. They're like, hey, didn't you have a podcast? And I'm like, yeah. Oh, you don't podcast anymore? No. Oh, well, you should get back into podcasting. I'm like, all right, cool, thanks. I've been thinking about it. I'll keep that in mind. So I was like, okay, cool. Then somebody else comes up to me that I'm familiar with. They're like, hey, like, did you have a podcast? And I'm like, yeah, I did. Well, maybe you should get back into it. Like, you haven't been podcasting in a while. Like, you should probably get back into it. And I told her that, different things have been coming up to me. Like, let me not say things. People have been saying this, and I guess different ways things have been encouraging me to want to possibly come back to this. So maybe I should, but I'm not really sure. I'm like, maybe I'm also a believer. So I'm like, maybe God is calling me back to this. I'm not really sure. But she's like, yeah, like if things keep telling you things, and then also people, so situations and things keep like basically pushing you back into the medium, maybe you should, give it a try. But at the time I was moving, so I was just like, that's not like, important to me right now, but it's something that I can revisit later on. So I was like, okay, cool. That's interesting. That's a person number 2. So keep this third thing in mind. I'm at a birthday party in a completely different state. So again, in this time frame, 2 other people have come up to me. And now I'm talking to the celebrant, right, of the party. We're chatting it up. And now a third person comes up to me. But this was the most interesting to me. She literally walks up from her table and comes to us in the center of the dance floor. And she looks at me. She says, hey, you look familiar. And I'm like, oh, that was cool. She's like, didn't you have a podcast? And I was like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, didn't you have a podcast? What was the name of your podcast? And I was like, oh, it's called The Plannter. And she's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I used to listen to you in college, and I used to love your content, and blah, blah, blah. And I was literally floored at that point. I was like, what is really going on? Like, be for real. What is happening here? And I was like, yeah, you're literally the third person, and it's crazy. I don't even know you. I don't even know you, but you're coming up to me and telling me about how impactful my podcast is. This is clearly a sign I probably need to get back to this. And the celebrant is there, and she starts tearing up. She's like, oh my goodness, like, this is amazing. I'm so encouraged, and this is like, she's happy to witness this and all this stuff, right? So that had me be like, okay, there must be something here that I have to consider and get back into this. So time has gone by since then, and I started planning, plotting, putting things together, thinking of ideas and all this stuff, trying to even get the tech together, okay? Because before I stopped podcasting, I had actually invested into a lot of different materials. I don't know the word for it, to, because I was like, I've been podcasting for that time for about 5 years. So I was like, okay, it's time to upgrade and make this thing like really be professional. But then like a month or two later, I checked out. So I'm, for the last couple of months, moving around, trying to figure out how to use this new system and make this the best that it can be where I'm at. And I ain't gonna lie to y'all, it's been interesting trying to do this because this is new again for me. This content has changed, podcasting has changed, and just trying to relearn how to do this, and then again challenging myself to do this on video. It's been really interesting. So that is how we ended up here. Finally, after 3 episodes of trying to get this together, this is how we've ended up here and recording the new podcast, Luxury State of Mind. And with this, I really want to make this really chill. I don't want to make this chill for me, okay? I'm trying moving forward not to put too much pressure on myself. One of my mentors encouraged me to take this as an opportunity to do it when I enjoy it, to make content when, I feel either inspired or energetic to do it, instead of feeling like it's something that I have to do. It's something that I get to do. So I'm trying to keep that in mind, and we'll see how this progresses over time. It's possible that I may continuously be posting every week or very far few in between. We'll see. So what you're really here for is Luxury State of Mind. What is Luxury State of Mind? Why is this becoming a new podcast? What are you going to gain from this podcast? And I think I need to backtrack a bit and give you the reason as to why I started this. So, Plannter is closed. I'm just trying to get myself together and figure out what I want to do next and what kind of content do I want to create and all this stuff, right? And something that was very interesting to me, and I think it was based off of where I was at the time, I was just observing life and just noticing different things. So the idea has evolved a little bit. I'll share where I was at then and kind of my thinking now. But at the time, I really wanted to, and I think it still does, serve Black women, because I was looking at different mediums. So I was looking at social media. I was looking at, people's lives that I was around, or even what was on TV. And I just was like, something just isn't matching up for me. One thing that I noticed in particular was I'd watch like reality TV, and, women would be on shows and they would be considered friends, talking, laughing, all this stuff. But then they're like gossiping about each other behind each other's backs with their friends, and they get to go on trips, and they, have perceived success. To be honest with you, I was a bit confused because I was like, is this the definition of friends? Because if this is something that's being shown on TV and it's being shown, we're sharing this stuff on social media, it does paint a picture that having good friends is not possible, or you should expect this type of behavior from your friends. So I don't know, that kind of stuck out to me. 1, 2, I didn't like how when it came to women succeeding, especially Black women, how it always looked like we had to strive and struggle in order to have something good in our lives. So looking at movies that had Black women as the main character, or shows that showed Black women, I was a bit confused. Why do they have to always be in a predicament that makes them struggle? Or, they don't have a good marriage, or they have a baby daddy, or this or that. Like, who is crafting these stories? And why is it that it's only when you can struggle to like dire extents, that's when you can have success or live the life that you truly want to live? That was also very confusing to me. And then another thing that was always making me question is this perspective of luxury. So you have nice clothes, you have the trips, you have everything, or even the career and everything that, society says that you should have, but your life is in turmoil. I was confused. And we see this again through TV shows, how people have it all, but when you peel back the layers, it's like, yeah, they can travel to wherever, but their life seems like a mess. And I actually had a dream about this where I went to somebody's house. It was a huge home, luxurious home, big closet. But when I got inside the house was a mess. The person that this man was with was disrespecting her publicly. And the house was dirty, but she had a big old closet full of handbags and shoes and all these different things. So that dream and then just my different observations made me question a lot of things and really think in this way that, are we settling for what we consider to be luxury, but it's actually not our version of luxury. It's not actually a life that we want or desire, but because it looks the part and acts the part, it's fine, even though for us we're settling. And nobody will know that, you may be settling in your life other than yourself, because there may be things that you actually aspire for and want to do or not want to do, but because of societal pressures or because of environment, social media have created a lens that this is the way that you should go. Or on the flip side of that, you think that there's a version of luxury that you should be living. You think that, if I had this or if I had that, then I would really be living. But maybe how you are right now doesn't resemble that. So it's like a longing for something that feels almost unattainable and makes you feel like you can't live a full life where you are right now. And one thing that I feel, and maybe I feel like this podcast also started because of what people tell me. Like, they're always like, girl, you're so bougie. Oh, Dammy, you so this. Oh, you so that. Like, you always like nice things. And it's like, I mean, that's true. Let's be for real. That is true. But what I do in my own life is I make sure I can get the best that I can have. And that doesn't always mean spending money and lots of money. It could mean making sure I'm eating the best that I can or that I can afford, or creating experiences for myself that are meaningful. So with this podcast, this is not about just going on all the trips, having the nicest handbags, and all of those things are fine. I'm not even being like, oh, you can't have those things, you shouldn't want them. That is between you and God. If that's what you want and that's what you desire for yourself, then go ahead. But I want to frame luxury in a different perspective. And I want to look at it from a state of mind. How do you live in luxury in a state of mind? How can you live in luxury every single day of your life? And what is that luxury? How do you make life a luxurious experience for you every day, no matter where you are, your background, or how much money you have? So this podcast is really to help you look within, and also to, once you look within, make changes that allow you to live the way that you truly desire, no matter where you are. So luxury is not for just some people. It's for everyone, but it's a state of mind. So this podcast is more to inspire you to create luxury for yourself in your everyday life. So no matter where you're coming from, no matter your background, no matter how much money you have, how do you make your life tailor-made for you? How do you make life more joyful for you? How do you make life resemble the true essence of who you are, rather than what you've been told that you should be okay with, or what you've seen has been okay before, but deep down within you, you're just like, I just want more out of life. And more doesn't necessarily mean, if I have a new bag, then I really made it. It could mean being able to hike on the weekends or take a bike ride during the week. It could mean having tea and coffee in the morning and having a time to just be with yourself. It could mean going on a trip with your friends every so often. It could mean so many different things. And that's the point of this podcast. It's to help you figure out what is important for you. How do you craft a luxurious life for yourself? So in luxury state of mind, luxury is going to be based off of 3 principles. So the first principle is going to be identity. In my opinion, I feel like when we talk about luxury state of mind, when you have a deeper understanding of your identity, meaning who you are and who you belong to, it allows you to then fuel decisions for yourself based off of that truth. So we're going to be talking about that on this podcast. How do you continue to grow in your identity? Grow in your identity in Christ and grow in your identity as an individual that has been made uniquely and wonderfully. How do you grow in that? That's 1. 2, once you are more firm in your identity, how do you then become intentional about making decisions that align with what you know to be true about you? How can you intentionally create boundaries? How can you intentionally say yes or no? How can you intentionally open yourself up to new opportunities that align with the woman that you are and want to be? And to align yourself with new opportunities that can help broaden your mind. So the third principle is freedom of choice. How do we feel empowered to make choices that better align with our version of living a luxurious life? How do you be empowered to be able to stand in the midst of criticism, in the midst of societal pressures, and make choices that align with who you actually are? So when we think about luxury, these are the 3 principles we're going to keep in mind. These actually have nothing to do with money. They have nothing to do with what neighborhood you live or who your friends are. Are you in affluent society or any of those things? This has to do more with the mind and the direction in which you want to go for yourself. And on this podcast, I really want to encourage you to open your mind to new possibilities. Maybe for you, luxury is having a more adventurous life. You want to live adventurous. You want to do things that spark joy for you. You want to find new opportunities to enjoy life. So the type of guests that I may bring on the podcast or the different topics that we may talk about, my goal is to expand your mind to what is possible. What can make life feel its best for you that aligns with the type of woman that you are called to be, and that is the truest version of yourself. So we'll explore that throughout the different podcast episodes. We'll probably go deeper into these principles and talk a little bit more about how we can align ourselves to these principles to live in luxury. So I hope that this has been helpful for you, and I hope it really helps you think, what is my version of luxury, and how can I live a more luxurious life where I am currently? How can I enjoy my life where I'm at right now? How can I be a self-assured woman and enjoy life and truly enjoy it? So I have only one favor to ask of you as you listen to this podcast, and this is something that I want to do moving forward. So when we talk about format of the podcast, something that I'd like to include in every episode is a voice note from you. I want to celebrate you, and I know the other women that are going to listen to this podcast want to celebrate you as well. So I'm going to leave a link inside the podcast show notes or on the podcast show notes. And I want you to send a voice note of what you're celebrating. How are you celebrating yourself this week, this month? What are you excited that you've done that was for you, that brings you closer to, the type of woman that you want to be? So an example of this could be, and I don't want it to be like, I can only do when, I get a promotion, or, when I go do something huge. I want it big and small and everything in between. So an example could be, you took a nap during the day because for you, maybe in the past you've struggled with resting, and now you're trying to rest a bit more and be okay with not having to control things. That's becoming your version of luxury. So you decided to do something scandalous and take a nap during the day. Or maybe you went on a trip with friends. Maybe you went on a trip with your spouse, or you were able to pick your child up during the middle of the day, and that's something that means something to you. I want to be able to celebrate you, and I know the women on this podcast want to do it as well. So again, leave a voice note. Let me know how you are celebrating yourself this week, and I would love to air it on the podcast. This is going to be something that I want to include in every episode and to share how we can celebrate each other. Or if you want to leave a comment, I can read it on the podcast as well. So this is going to be our thing that we're going to do. So again, click the link in the show notes and you can record it. So thank you so much for listening to the first episode of the Luxury State of Mind podcast. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye.